Alright guys, what's up? So, I'm gonna be pissing some people off today with this. I have a lot of friends who like Bernie Sanders, but I don't care. His plans are terrible, and in reality, there's very little chance he's gonna win the nomination anyways, so let's have some fun by tearing apart his plans. BernieSanders.com/issues. Alright, one by one, let's go through this. Income and wealth inequality. Alright, cool. So, right off the bat, he's wrong. Starts by saying we live in the richest country in the history of the world. That's false. I guess it depends on how you define richest, but by any standard metric, we aren't. GDP per capita at purchasing power parity, which is, the typical thing people use for the wealth of nations. Qatar is the richest nation in the world, followed by Luxembourg, then Singapore. And actually, by this metric, we're number 10 as of 2014, which was the most recent ranking I could find. But, that's just one thing. Let's go on. He goes on to wealth and income inequality, which, I mean, Jesus, man. First of all, you want to talk about income inequality. If you make 32 grand a year, you're in the global 1%. So think about that for a second. You care so much about income inequality. How about global income inequality? Huh? Anyways, I know people are going to say it's about our country. People are stealing wealth, right? No, they're not. Let's get more in depth on this. He talks about how the middle class is shrinking, which, that's, if you listen to any of his speeches, the middle class is shrinking, it's a big deal, and he's right. Middle class is shrinking into the wealthier brackets. In fact, since 1970, the distribution of households making more than $100,000 a year has jumped from 8.1% to 24.7% adjusted for inflation. So, huge increase in the amount of money everyone's making. And according to a Financial Times study, the growth in average household earnings from 1971 to 2015 is up $80,000 again, and adjusted for inflation. So yes, the rich are getting richer, but the poor are getting richer too. He then goes into talking about child poverty, saying that the U.S. has the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country. Which, again, is just wrong. Unfortunately, people don't look into these things. They just take what's said as fact. Fortunately for you, I have looked into these things, and here's what I found. UNICEF reports that the U.S. has lower childhood poverty rates than Greece, Spain, Mexico, Latvia, and Israel, which are all OECD countries. And Sanders never clarified what he meant by major countries. I'll take as an assumption that OECD countries would all count as major countries. So the US rate is roughly equal to the rate in Romania, Iceland, Lithuania, and Turkey. So even if we accept Sanders' statement from there and don't look into it anymore, we can see we aren't really a huge outlier. We don't have massive poverty. But let's look into it a little bit more, huh? So UNICEF measures poverty rates as a percentage of median household income for the country. So they take 60% of the middle household income, the median household income, as poverty. So a Portuguese family making less than 60% of the median income of Portugal is said to be in poverty. A U.S. family has to make less than 60% of the U.S. median household. It's kind of unfair, right? Different countries have different incomes. So, if we compare these levels using purchasing power parity, basically you get international dollars, equal value of income. Using the OECD statistics on household income, we see that median income in the US is higher than 29 out of the other 33 countries. Okay, cool. What does that mean? That means there's a pretty high chance that if you're making 60% of the US median, and you're technically at poverty level, you're not really all that bad off in comparison with other countries. So again, let's go deeper. So we'll take this 60% median we looked at, and look at that. Someone making 60% of the median income in the United States make more than the total median income of Chile, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Greece, Hungary, Israel, Mexico, Poland, Portugal, the Slovak Republic, and Turkey, and comes very close to the median income levels of Italy, Japan, Slovenia, and Spain. So what does it mean? It means that being poor in the United States is about equal to being middle class in much of Europe. And people want to complain about this. Seriously? You want to complain about the fact that you're living like the average person in Spain? Seriously? I mean, sure, we have a pretty high poverty rate, but the standard of living at poverty in America is immensely better than people living in poverty in these other countries. You want to talk about childhood poverty rates? How about we look at countries with high poverty rates and low median incomes? Mexico, poverty rate roughly 35%. Poverty income level less than $5,000. Turkey, poverty rate roughly 30%. Poverty income level less than $10,000. Greece, poverty level roughly 40%. Poverty income level less than $10,000. United States, poverty level roughly 30%. Poverty income level between $15,000 and $20,000. And by the way, this calculation takes into account social benefit programs, welfare, Medicaid, all that stuff, so you can't throw that as, oh, well, Europe has better social programs than we do, because that's included in these calculations. So if you guys really care about child poverty, if you really care about helping the poor, look at the countries where the standard of living is 3 to 4 times worse than yours, at the middle class level. In major countries, this doesn't even look at any developing third world countries, the poverty level here is way better than a lot of middle class people there. Anyways, just shows that the word inequality means nothing. I'd rather be unequal in the United States than equal in Mexico or Portugal. Anyways, moving on to his actual checklist, or numbered list thing. Let's look at what he wants to do about this inequality. Number 1, demanding that the wealthy and large corporations pay their fair share. First of all, what the hell does fair share mean? I've never been explained this. If someone can define the term fair share to me, and we can establish it up front, then sure, we'll work towards fair share. But at this point in time, it seems like fair share just means whatever the hell anyone wants it to mean. It's kind of upsetting. Secondly, corporations don't pay taxes. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? People pay taxes. When you tax a corporation, you know who actually pays those taxes? Shareholders, employees, consumers. The business just passes on the cost to other people, and why wouldn't they? I mean, come on. This isn't rocket surgery, guys. It's not complicated. He also wants to create an estate tax. Well, estate taxes are bullcrap for so many reasons. Taking away someone's inheritance just incentivizes their parents to spend it all while they're alive. You won't get any more money out of this. Either that, or it's very easy to establish a foreign trust, which is 100% legal and completely out of the jurisdiction of the US government. So there's that. People are going to avoid this type of tax. Next, the famous tax on Wall Street. People don't seem to understand this. I mean, I agree. Wall Street needs some reform, but if you tax speculation on Wall Street, if you tax trading, you're taxing the middle class. And I'll explain why. You're putting more transaction prices on buying and selling shares. Who does that? Sure, there's, not proprietary, what's the term? Whatever, in-house trading accounts. No, it is proprietary brokerage, yeah. So, sure, they trade for their own firms, but mutual funds, hedge funds, you're going to be taxing them. So, they'll just increase their expense ratios. Does that affect you? I mean, do you have a 401k? Are you part of a pension program? I'm sure you have some sort of investment in mutual funds or something like that. Many, many people do. If the company you work for has a retirement program, you would be paying this tax. It's going to be passed on to people trying to save for retirement, people investing in their 401ks and their IRAs, all that stuff. You're taxing the people that you're talking about defending. Next, moving on to increasing the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour by 2020. Quote, By the year 2020, no one working 40 hours a week should be living in poverty. Now, what the economically illiterate senator doesn't seem to understand is that, sure, maybe some people, the people working won't be living in poverty, but less people will be working. It's basic business. It's basic math. It's not even basic business. If the cost of employment goes up, less people get employed. I mean, I've talked about why raising minimum wage doesn't work before. I'm not going to go in huge detail because we have a lot more to cover, but it's cost benefit. People are going to lose jobs, and it's going to be terrible for the economy. Point number 3. Putting 13 million Americans to work by investing $1 trillion over 5 years towards rebuilding our crumbling roads, bridges, and blah, blah, blah. Infrastructure. I actually kind of agree with this. We definitely need to work on rebuilding our infrastructure. I personally would do it through private raising of funds, but, tomato, potato, it's all the same. Number 4. Reversing trade policies like NAFTA. Come on, man, really? China, driven down wages, caused the loss of millions of jobs. Dude, oh my god. Okay. There are very few things economists agree on across schools of economic thought. But one thing that every economist agrees on is free trade. Free trade is good. Yeah, we lost jobs in industries that we can't do effectively, which frees up money and labor for industries we can do better. And you know what? I'll do another recording about why free trade is good. But essentially, there's always another area for resources to go. We do something better than China. They do something better than us. Mutual gain from the trade. It's all about opportunity costs. I'm working on an article right now about tariffs and protectionism because I need to get some written content up, and I'll just turn that into a basic free market misconceptions article. Number 5, creating 1 million jobs for disadvantaged youth by investing $5.5 billion. Then get rid of the minimum wage, man. You want unskilled, young, underprivileged people to get jobs, let them get hired and learn how to do better paying things. I mean, God, I always go back to this. I always talk about Singapore because it's the best example. No minimum wage, very little regulation, and in 60 years went from being not a country to, depending on the metrics you look at, the second or third wealthiest country in the world. Again, it's not a difficult concept. People get into the labor force earlier for less pay, they learn skills, they get more pay as they're older. Point number 6. Fighting for equal pay. Quote, "It is an outrage that women earn just 78 cents for every dollar a man earns." Bernie. Do you research your positions? Do you look into these things, or do you just say what people want? Never mind. You're a politician. What am I saying? Of course, you just say what people want to hear. But no, seriously, there is no wage gap. There isn't. There's an earnings gap, which is a completely different matter, and we can look into that right now. Well, actually, right off the bat, let me just say that I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but if you think women can be hired for a full 22% less than men, the labor market would be dominated by women. Only women would be working. If I could hire someone for 78% of what I would have to pay another person, and they have the exact same qualifications, I would only hire that person and people like her. But anyways, let's go back looking at the statistics. So wage implies hourly pay. There's no wage gap. If we're doing the same job, have the same qualifications and everything, we're making the same hourly wage. Earnings implies salary, and that's the very important distinction. There is an earnings gap. It's a small one, but it exists. There's reasons for this. First of all, women typically don't go into as high-paying fields. Obviously, this isn't a rule, and actually, Forbes had an article out, I think sometime last year. There have never been as many female CEOs of Fortune 500 companies as there is right now. So the opportunity's there, it's just that statistically, women tend towards majors in fields that pay less. There are less women than men working in engineering and computer science. Also, women are much more likely to interrupt their careers. to take care of children. Which means when they do go back to work, they're behind their coworkers because they've taken time off. They haven't improved their skill set as much as someone who didn't take time off, and thus are paid less. Statistically, women take more vacation time than men. Women don't stay at the same company for as long as men. They move around more. And I know I'm going to have some of my women friends get mad hearing me say this, so again, I say statistically, you may be one of the outliers, which would mean, theoretically, you should be getting paid as much as your male coworker. In fact, Milo Yiannopoulos, who's a Breitbart reporter and a really entertaining guy all around, he did a lot of research on this, looking at the myths of gender inequality in regard to pay, and found that women in their 30s, especially in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, are actually paid more than men if, and there is some ifs, if they work the same hours, have the same qualifications, the same amount of experience, they typically get paid more than men. And in these fields, women are much more likely to get the job. If you have a Harvard grad male and a Harvard grad female with the same degree, same amount of work experience, the woman is much more likely to get the job from a statistical standpoint. So, on to the next one then. Number 7, the bane of my existence, making tuition free at public colleges and universities. Okay, so first of all, let's just look at the great job the government's done running our K-12 school system, right? I mean, I think we can all agree we need some more of that, right? Anyways, there's a direct relationship, and you can look this up, between the amount of student debt subsidized by the government and the cost of tuition increasing. I think it was Pew Research that looked into it, but I'm not 100% sure. You can look it up. There's tons of articles out there about it. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, subsidized things aren't going away. The more you subsidize something, the more you get of it. So if you're guaranteeing this pay to these schools, why wouldn't they increase their prices? They know they have more money coming in. They're like, oh, we can expand this thing we wanted to expand because we know the money's going to come in. Obviously, they're going to have to charge more. Secondly, it's immoral to force someone to pay for something, especially something they aren't using or don't want to use or never intend to use. I don't want kids. Hopefully I'll never have kids. And if I don't have kids, then why should I be paying for a college that I'm never going to send my kid to? Why do I have to pay for your kid's tuition? It's your responsibility as a parent to do that, or for you to raise your kid to work hard enough to receive scholarships or private loans. I'm against forcing someone to pay for anything all the time. And I know someone's going to come in here, oh, what about roads and police force and all that stuff? Yeah, that's a separate issue. We can talk about that another time. I accept that I have to pay for it, but I think there's alternatives. Third, even with massive government-funded student loan industry that exists right now, most college students don't come from poor families. Some of them do. But most college students come from middle class, upper middle class, wealthy families. So not only are you increasing the cost by increasing these subsidies, but you're subsidizing children that can probably afford school already, while making it less affordable to the poorer kids who want to go there to get a better life, who have the grades to go and just need the money. In reality, what we should be doing is telling people that college isn't a necessity. I mean, yeah, there are certain things that if you want to do a specific thing, go to college, but trade schools exist. Wonderful blue-collar work exists, and we need people doing this. You can make a lot of money doing it. I know a plumber, personally, that makes 6 figures a year. No college education, affordable trade school, 6 figures a year being a plumber. Also, and, I live in a college town, so I hear people talking about this kind of crap all the time. Kids, and I don't even like saying kids because I'm not that much older than them, but people need to realize that if they major in philosophy or dance, they're not going to be making a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love philosophy. I've always loved philosophy. I read books and articles all the time on philosophical subjects, but it's as a hobby. I don't expect it to pay my bills. There are degrees that are worth more than others. Moving on, number 8. Okay, expanding Social Security. I'm not talking about that again. I did a recording about this already. Go listen to my recording about Social Security. I think I did it last week, maybe the week before. I cover everything there. 9. Guaranteed health care as a right of citizenship. You are not entitled to the product of someone else's labor. Very simple concept. Subsidizing is bad, always. Increasing demand without increasing supply, while simultaneously reducing the incentive of supply, will eventually lead to a shortage. I mean, that doesn't even bring up the argument on how we're going to pay for this. So it's a simple concept. If anyone wants to look more in depth, or they want a more in-depth discussion about guaranteed healthcare, I'm willing to do so, but it's a very simple concept. I don't think it warrants much more discussion right now. Number 10. Jeez, how many of these are there? Requiring employers to provide at least 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave, 2 weeks of paid vacation, 7 days of paid sick days. Okay, so this kills competition. Requiring this type of thing. Say it wasn't required. Say 2 companies did the same thing, offered the same pay, and one offered paid leave and the other didn't. More people would want to work for the company that gave the paid leave. Maybe. I mean, it's a cost-benefit issue. Someone might not need all this vacation time, or they might not want it. And right now, they could have a higher paying job because this isn't mandated. If it becomes mandated, then all that extra money they could have gotten is eaten away by the expenses of this regulation. They're forced into having something they don't want or need and lose money because of it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Decreasing regulation puts more power in the hands of the employees. They can choose where to work. They can choose the employer that will treat them best, and the employers that discriminate or don't treat their employees well will suffer. They won't have workers. They'll go out of business. People will refuse to work with them. I think it's hilarious that he's trying to mandate higher pay and mandate less time working. It's insane. I don't understand it. Next point, guaranteed pre-K programs. Okay. Government-funded schools suck. When you use someone else's money to guarantee something, it means you have to you have to deliver regardless of quality. It's going to be bad. I mean, you guarantee something even if you can't get a quality product. Or, we told them we have to. We're going to do it. If pre-K is so important, the last group I want in charge of it is the government. He talks right here about, the first few years or the toddler years are the most important in developing someone. Yeah, they probably are. Which is why I don't want some unionized, subsidized government employee that doesn't care and only got into this because it's a safe job that the government guarantees raising these kids. They need someone that cares more. Private pre-Ks are hands down better than government-funded pre-Ks. Private schools in general are hands down better than government-funded schools. There was a study released in 2013 that shows government-funded pre-K programs show little to no benefit to the children. Number 12, making it easier to form unions. Unions are terrible. Unions subsidize bad workers at the expense of good workers. Someone can be a terrible employee, and as long as they're part of a union, they get paid as much as a good employee. It's collectivism. It's forcing someone to pay for unequal labor, and it's wrong. He also cites the declining middle class as an effect of union rights being undermined, and there is no declining middle class. There's, we already talked about the middle class is making more money. So again, that doesn't matter. Last point, number 13. Okay, breaking up large financial institutions. Kind of torn on this one. I agree that the bailouts were a terrible idea. Absolute waste of money. However, the government should not be allowed to go into private industry and tear companies apart. They should not be allowed to go in and interfere with private industry. That's another argument. The FBI Apple thing going on now. The government can't go mandate a company to create something. They shouldn't be able to go in and rip a company apart. And I know what you guys are thinking, what about monopolies? Well, most monopolies that have existed were backed by government policy. Carnegie's steel industry was backed by tariffs on foreign steel. Either directly or indirectly, governments have supported most monopolies, and monopolies that have existed outside of government policy only became monopolies because they provided the best service to people. I don't care if there's a monopoly as long as there's a free market system in place, because the only way they get to become a monopoly is by providing the best service at the best price to the most people. And there will always be little guys that, if you hate monopolies, you can go pay more to a smaller company. Monopolies don't mean this is the only company in this industry. It just means they dominate the industry. It's impossible to 100% keep people out of an industry. They might not be super profitable, but there's always entry opportunities. The best way to deal with corruption and greed, whatever that means, greed, on Wall Street, at least, is to separate politics from economics. The Federal Reserve is a joke. The Federal Reserve is not entirely, but a large part of the reason we had the Great Depression in the first place. The Federal Reserve is the reason our economy has been terrible since 2008, arguably since the 99-2000 dot-com bubble. There has been no economic recovery. For any of you that think there has been, I'm more than willing to point out all of the statistics that show you we haven't gotten better at all. Economic policy breeds corruption. If the government doesn't have the power to hand out favors to certain industries, if they can't subsidize certain industries, there's no reason for these industries to try to bribe politicians in the first place. Let the good businesses succeed, let the bad businesses fail, boom. Free market takes care of the bullcrap. Again, it's not rocket surgery. It's not complicated. Very, very basic business competition. I wanted to go through the whole website. I didn't realize there was going to be 13 points right at the beginning. I did look at the first couple ahead of time. I mean, I didn't have all those inequality statistics off the top of my head, but next time, maybe tomorrow or in a couple days, I'm going to go to the next part of his website, entitled "It's Time to Make College Tuition-Free and Debt-Free." So I assume it'll just be a more in-depth look at what I've already said regarding tuition, and a more thorough refutation. So, to all of my friends who support Sanders, I want to say sorry, but I'm not sorry. Feel free to message me and argue about this. I'm always willing to. If you got pissed off, too bad. Anyways, until next time, guys, thanks for listening.